All right, David, thank you so much for joining us today. This is something that we've done in the past. So we've had a few in conversations, and so thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it. It's really cool to be able to chat with you in our I think second in conversation for this year. Yeah. So we really appreciate your time. So I think before we carry on, David, for those of us, for those people who aren't listening or who don't know you, yeah. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, a little bit of a background, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah. So if I take a brief synopsis of who I am and where I've come from and where I'm heading, it's quite complicated for myself, but I started my life out in the hospitality industry, and for 35 years of my life, I was a professional chef. I opened a string of restaurants, sort of fine dining, but most of my restaurants I built myself physically. I would get an old building and twist it and turn it and perfect it to my sort of style of running a restaurant, and also look and feel. And as I progressed in this industry, you get to a certain time in your life when you feel, is this what I want? And the industry is incredibly difficult. It's from a personal perspective, from a health perspective, from a family perspective, it eats away at every corner of your life. And spending, 14 to 16 hours a day in a kitchen, and my life just evaporated. I wasn't there for my kids. I wasn't there for friends. I was always having to work. And I started to relook at my life, and I thought, what, I'm going to take a serious detour now. And I always say that someone left that kitchen door open one day, and I bolted, and I didn't want to go back. And in a way, I went out to search, who am I? Who the hell am I? What makes me tick? Because from a really young age, I just got immersed into this industry, and it absorbed me, and it ate me up. And health-wise, it wasn't great, and relationship-wise and family-wise, everything was a bit of a mess. So I went out and looked at what would be the best way to introflect and to, the weird thing was, in the way I wanted to see the damage that had happened around me, and was I part of it? Because of my maybe selfish, self-centered career in chefing, I sort of got immersed into chefing in that stage of life where chefs started to become something. And without realizing it, your dedication to this just destroys everything around you. And then I started on my adventure career, and it was amazing how the hours and hours of wandering on your own gave you new perspectives and perceptions and seeing life differently. And I started to realize in this journey that the more I started to put my hand out to the others, the more it started to heal me as an individual. And I felt that I was actually quite a nucleus to the chaos around me. It was actually me. And you're often always pointing away at someone else, and it's when you come to that realization, that time that what, I've got to do something about myself. I am the one that has to change. I've got to find real purpose in life. I've got to be able to deal with everything, and through this process evolve. And that's got me to where I am in life now. This journey that I'm now on and have been embarking on for the past 15 years. And this new journey has been unbelievable. It's been, in a way, healing to be able to share my story with other people. But the further I go down this road, the more I realize that it's not what you do, it's who you are, and the ability to be able to share as a normal person what I've been through, what I've faced. And we all face the same. We've all been through the same. And just to be real and bring yourself down to earth and just sit on a level with everyone else and say, you know what, I also cry. I also laugh. I also have family issues. I also stuff up. I'm just human. I'm just myself. And then we relate so much better with each other. I've stopped sort of trying to chase the impossible, and I am possible. It's all of us are. So that's where I'm sitting in the space of my life now.
Okay, so I want to go back to sort of the story after sort of leaving the restaurant industry. It obviously has taken a huge amount of self-awareness and a discovery of purpose, and I think purpose has always been a massive part of your life. You've always been known as an extreme adventurer, and I want to go back to that. You were the first individual with Brahm Malharba to run the course of the Wall of China, and you've done some phenomenal things in your life. Take us through some of those stories and what drove you. I mean, there's got to be some incredible sense of purpose that gets you to do some of the crazy things that us mere mortals would see as crazy. How did you discover that sense of purpose?
It started basically, I weighed about 115 kilos and I wasn't in a good space. And I felt that I was just ambling along and being this self-destructive steamroller and taking other people in the wake of this, especially my family and my kids. And I think where it started was I actually was in a stage where I'd stuffed up. And you want to look someone in the eye and say to them, honestly, I'm sorry. And when you get to that stage, I think that gives you fundamental purpose. You go out now and say, you know what? I've got to rectify this for myself, for the people around me. And actually, I want to be of value to society. Although if I look back at my career as a chef, there were huge things that we did there, but I think I needed to bring that little circle closer and do that thing where you say to your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your children, I'm honestly I'm sorry, what happened? Or was it my fault? Was it not? And you start looking at that. And I think when you get to that stage and you start looking back at life, that yearning to find real purpose comes to you. And we have in the past discussed this, and when you find honest, real purpose, it gives you the ability to deal with anything. It really does, because it's passion driven, it's purpose driven, and you've used the word resilience, and I think passion and purpose come together, and that gives you the resilience to deal with no matter what you face, because in the back of your head, it's not for me anymore. There's a reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I remember on the wall when I got back, Professor Wayne Derman, who was my mentor, mentally and physically and that, and he said to me, he said, I can guarantee you, if you did the wall just for yourself, you would not have got to the end of it. You did it for a reason bigger than yourself. And I think a lot of us in life, if we look and you take yourself out of the equation and that word purpose, that becomes central and fundamental to who you are and why you do what you do. It enables you to take on these challenges. And as you say, the war was massive, and it was, everything was thrown at us. And then it was the run of the whole coastline of South Africa, which was actually amazing at its time as well, because it was just coming back to my own country and seeing how we were embarking on this massive road of change as South Africa. And, looking through all these coastal communities and seeing how people themselves were trying to find purpose in the new South Africa and deal with life and change. And some roads were the right ones taken, others were disastrous, and we've seen the consequences. But it was nice to experience this as I, as an individual, as a South African, as a father, was going through this. Yeah, I come back after being through China and realizing what I had to do myself. Yeah, I get immersed into my own country, and I'm starting to see this unfold as a new young country, and how that journey has taken us. And then I paddled across to the island of Madagascar from the coast of Africa, and you arrive there immersed in a country caught in a time warp that had been through so many different governments and countries ruling it and raping and pillaging the country of its all natural resources and everything. And here's now Madagascar also coming out of this whole and evolving and developing. They were in civil war at the time when I got there. I think it was in 2010, and the president was in exile in South Africa. And just to see how the Malagasy people were unfolding and evolving, it was quite a trip. And then from Madagascar, I ended up running India from north to south, starting in Kashmir. And you know, that journey as well was, if I look at Madagascar, that was probably physically the hardest journey I've ever been through. I had malaria, bilharzia, you know, just things just went chaotic. Then I get to India, and India becomes the hardest mental journey I've ever been through. And, you know, often in life, it's not the experiences itself, it's the people who change your life. I said that in the beginning, when you reach out to someone. And in India, I met so many deeply spiritual people who look at the demise of humanity around them, and they still see light at the end of it. They come to terms. It was amazing. You get these guys and they say, look here, there's nothing you can do about the external things in your life. But if you can just step back for once or twice, reset yourself and come to peace with yourself, and then go out and deal with the impossible things occurring around you, it gives you clarity and sanity to look at it in a better way. And I think that journey of India gave me a lot of that ability with the work that I'm now doing back home in South Africa, working in the informal settlements, predominantly setting up medical infrastructure and medical facing projects. It gave me that ability to sometimes deal with stuff that I would come back to the office cracked and in tears, and you say to the other guys, like, how can you sit here and you don't know what the hell's going out there? You're stuck in this bubble. And I'd fight with the corporate guys back and then leave the office in a huff and head back out and just do something and, you know, get it done and come back and suffer the consequences later. But
I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing now a little bit later, but just to go back, I mean, you've done some incredibly, you know, some things that have, you know, required massive, I think the word that comes to my mind is grit. And Angela Duckworth has done a lot of research, and she describes it as passion and perseverance over a long period of time. Can you describe a situation, you know, what's the darkest hole that you've been in, where that sense of purpose, what goes through your head in one of those moments where you really feel like there's nothing else that you can give? What goes through your head in a moment like that gets you out of that hole? You know, what was the experience?
The weird thing is the mind's incredible, and those holes fade very quickly, and they always get that silver ring around it of getting out of it, that sort of success thing. You just see that glow. But when you're in that hole, I think one of the biggest things to me was not to let anyone else down. I'd come on this journey. I'd made a promise to a certain group of people that through this journey, I'm going to get to the other end. And because of getting there, I'm going to make a difference in your life. So a lot of the times, and Andrew, who I've done 6 events with me, we were sitting in China in one of these holes. We were contemplating of giving up. This was the second run of the Great War. And we both had tendinitis. He was so bad, he ended in hospital and he came out of crutches. Sure. And he sat there and he said, you know what? This journey is not about us. It's about the people we've made a promise to. We cannot let them down. And it's those moments at the back of your mind, you say, you know what? It's not about me. It's got nothing to do with me. I've made a promise. I've made a commitment, and I must see it through. And I think so often that grit and that in our personal lives is so important. And you know, I remember that this one guy saying to me in India as well, he says, if you have reason for why you are suffering, it's no longer suffering. It's so true. And every time I get into these holes and I think, you know what, I've got a reason why I put myself in here, I'm going to get out of here. And it's not as bad as I think I can get out of here because I've got a reason why I have to get out. And it's those moments in your life that grit comes through. and you just become the stubborn, dog-headed individual that gets up and waddles off, I don't know, in oblivion and in a daze. No, it's crazy what happens there.
David, you've always said that building or having the right people around you has always been sort of the cornerstone to your success. Now, it's not an easy thing to surround yourself with the right people, to build great teams, and to build, the right kind of culture, that enables success. So if you look back at your restaurant days where you've created some, phenomenal establishments, and to the work that you do right now, what would you say is the key to building great teams and to getting a team of people mobilized behind a vision and a purpose that works? How do you go about creating that kind of culture?
It was weird at hotel school. My hotel's crew that I worked with were normally the kids that were going to be chucked out of Silwood's college, or they were going to be thrown out of hotel school. They were the hooligans. And I would often go and sit with the lecturers. And I said, I want to meet those kids. I want to interview them. And it's a child like that who has initiative. I just look for people with initiative. If you say to them and you give them something to do, and they will sit there and no matter what, they will find a way to do it. And those are the type of people that you can really build on. Of course, you need certain specialities, but it's weird. My circle of my crew have always been a bunch of renegades that you throw them in a hole, and I tell you, they find their way out of it. So I love that spark and that drive and that passion that's sitting in someone, and everyone around them thinks they're failures. You just got to give them that little bit to say, you know what, I believe you can prove that you can be successful. So in my kitchen, I had these chefs and that they turned out to be amazing. I'm still in contact with them, and a lot of them have their own businesses now, and they've done really well. But we worked hard together, we played hard together, and if I said to the guys, we're going to work straight through for 2 nights now. We've got this huge wedding to do. The guys are there, and the same with the crew on these adventures. Everyone thinks you plan an adventure down to the last bit. And I suppose that's why I need people that are a bit mull around me, because we know where we're going to start. We know where we're going to get at the end. We know where we want to end up. In between, I don't know where the hell we're going. But it's just believe in each other's ability, and we get there. And that's why I love adventuring, because that's the type of mind I have. With food, with everything, it's creative, it's passionate, it's like gung-ho. And we always were pushing the limits, and that's sort of the way I suppose I'm not normal.
I think that makes a lot of sense. In the research that I've done in terms of creating great teams and what leaders do, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Is that you've taken individuals who, perhaps in their own minds didn't see, a great sense of future or a vision beyond what they were experiencing right now, and you've given them a sense of hope, and you've given them a sense that a preview of success in the future, and that you could help take them there, if they went along this journey with you. And it's amazing that you've been able. And I know that when we chatted last, you mentioned that you still keep in touch with some of those individuals who you used to work with back then. Can you describe any of those success stories of people that you took through that journey and what they're doing now?
Yeah, there's a guy, Leon, he came from Gauteng, and he was working at a caddy at the golf course, and he walked across to me like 3 times. He says, "I want to work at this restaurant." I looked at this guy and I thought, "There's no ways, Oak. You do it like a caddy here. How can I train you up?" And he was so persistent. Eventually I said, "Okay, guy, you've got the graft." And he worked with us. He ended up being one of the managers at the restaurant, and he's now running a decent business in a different industry, but he learned the basics there. I've got another guy who also ended up, he just got a John Platter, and he wanted to work at a top restaurant as a waiter. He looked in John Platter, came up with my restaurant. He came and he says, "I want to work for you." So I said, what do you know? No, you just work here and there. And kept pushing him aside. And I thought, okay, you've got the guts and the grit to keep persevering. Join the crew. He also ended up, and he's running his own businesses now across the country, still in the food game. He ended up there. Andy, one of my best mates, who adventures with me now, and he ended up running 2 of my restaurants. He came to an interview. One of my partners picked him up and brought him to my main restaurant. He said, this kid's got a problem. He reeks of booze. My wife and I had to drive with the windows up and feed him noises. So we did the interview, and then he said to Andy, look, get out. I want to speak to David. He says, David, this kid's got a problem. I can't work with him. I said, listen here, this guy probably partied through the night. He got up. He still came to the interview. He sat here through it. This is the guy we must employ. So he said, okay, it's on your back. We employ him. And you know, we've done so much together now. You know, it's funny how you meet guys and it's that personality that clicks. You know, there's a saying like, I take people that have got more courage than common sense, and we make things happen.
I think those are amazing stories. I think you have a really, really good ability to be able to see the best in people and to extend trust. And I think what tends to happen when we extend trust is that people live up to their expectation that you've placed in them. And I think that you've just made that work so well so many times in your life with the teams that you've created around you. You mentioned earlier that along the journey that you've made a couple of mistakes along the way. If you had to do things differently, if you had to change things up, what are some of the major things that you've learned, along the journey so far?
I'm very, very spontaneous, and I have a mind that doesn't stop. And the only thing I would probably change is just slow down a little bit with some of my ideas. But the problem is that if someone says to me, you can't do it, that's when I say, stuff you. I prove I can. And that's probably it's a good trait, but it's also a bit of a downfall. But in saying that, I think it's probably a strength as well. Is never giving up on proving that something can be done and finding a way to do it. But maybe just slow down a little bit and think twice instead of acting impulsively. So that's probably.
All right.
Sometimes not say what
what's most important to you, David? I mean, if you had to look at some of your values, some of the things that are most important to you in your life, what are the values that drive the decisions that you make?
The biggest value is most of the stuff I do is always centered around someone around me. And some of those impulsive decisions, as I said, sometimes end up not being the best ones. But, my biggest value and things is that belief and trust in the person that you're with. And I think if you trust someone and you give them the space and the freedom to express themselves, 9 times out of 10, your relationship with that person and the relationship with what you're trying to achieve is successful. It's all about trust and and respect. You spend a lifetime building respect, and you can throw it away in an instant. You do one little thing wrong, and you've earned this life of respect in that, but you can stuff it up so quickly and just remain true to that value. Respect others as you expect that respect to come back, and be honest and truthful with people, and just speak the truth. Then you don't have to cover up anything. It's so important.
I got 2 more questions, David, and then we're going to wrap things up. You come across as somebody who is not afraid to be vulnerable, to admit that you need help, to admit that you've made some mistakes. Now, has there ever been a moment where you have not made the right decision in a team, or where you have reached a situation where you don't know the way forward and you've asked for help? How did that work out?
Going to answer that, going back to Andrew, because of my sort of hard-headed sort of way that I deal with life, one of the biggest things that I learned through adventuring with him was actually the slow realization. I'm saying slow because it took me a while to realize this, that it's okay to sit back and say, Andy, seriously, I stuffed up and I'm sorry, Oak, I'm sorry. And do you know what a relief that is? That you're not always right, although you might be the team leader or the entrepreneur, whatever. You need to, what you say, you need to fail to become stronger in your next step of success. And you need to be able to admit you failed. And I think a lot of us feel that it's not right to admit failure in that. And as I've progressed further in life, I ask for advice more often, and I admit my errors more often. And I've been able to see what my limitations are. When I was younger, I refused to see that I had any limitations, and I tried to be the jack of all trades. And now I have the ability, I'm mastering what I'm best at, because I've realized that I have vulnerable areas and areas that if I pursue that, I will fail. I need help there. And that's when I reach out and ask for that help.
Some of the things that I've got from this discussion so far is some of the major lessons I'm learning is grit. Passion and perseverance over time is something that's really important, if we're going to enjoy success. And I think you've been an incredible example of that. The other thing that I've taken out of this conversation is that vulnerability is actually a major strength, and that if we're going to build successful teams and create a successful network around us, that one of the most important characteristics of great leaders is to admit, I've stuffed up, I need help. And I think you've been a great example of that as well. COVID, we're still in the midst of COVID, and it's been a really challenging time for a lot of people out there. And I don't think that we're going to be out of this, situation for another couple of months still. For those individuals listening and who are going through a tough time, who, may have lost jobs, who are struggling with their relationships, who are, feeling that they can't really, hack it and make it in the next little while, what would you say to them?
I feel what COVID's done, it's actually drawn open the curtain on so many vulnerable aspects of our lives that we've refused to actually introspect and look at. And decisions that we made that we're living by, they're all coming to the forefront now. And it's the ability to deal with this now and move on. And it's actually, I think it's a perfect time and a scenario for all of us to reset and to actually challenge ourselves in the way that we are living our lives and how we have been living them, and ask ourselves, am I still relevant the way I'm carrying on? Are we still relevant the way we're doing things? And I think it's a good opportunity. We need to take the positive out of this, because for the foreseeable future, things are going to be like this. And we have to learn to adapt, evolve, and change in this new scenario. And it's very difficult because as human beings, we feely, touchy people in that. So I think it's if we can introspect and find what our little Achilles heels are and where we've been going wrong, because there's, as we all know, everything's just been going at this radical pace. You can hide your errors and flaws in that. You just move on to the next thing. Now it's, those fissures and cracks and crevices are opening and they're sucking us in. And most of us are in these difficult positions because we're fighting to admit to our personal flaws and failures and that. And I think it's a good time for us to look at that and to talk about it. Hell, to talk is so amazing. It's such a great thing just to sit down, and it gives people time in small groups now to do that. And I think it'll be a great healing for us to be able to to realize that we're all in the same boat. We all, as I said in the beginning, laugh, cry, succeed, fail, and realize that we're not all superheroes. No matter what I've achieved in life, I'm still basically a father, a son, a brother, and I do mess up, and I need to stand up and pick myself up again to climb that next little peak I have, because our Everests aren't out there anymore. These Everests are personal little Everests we've got to conquer in order, when those doors are open again, we can go out there and achieve the impossible. But we've now got to get ourselves straight, and I think it's a wonderful time. Sit back, chill, and sort ourselves out, including me.
I think that's another great lesson, or something. Another key takeaway that I've taken away from our discussion today is that self-awareness, it strikes me that as you've gone along this journey, you've had a lot of time to look inside of yourself and to become more self-aware, and to realize, how your thoughts drive your actions, and how that influences other people. And I think it's a great, probably one of the key skills of leadership is increasing self-awareness. And I think you're on that path to making that happen, really well in your life. And we appreciate your time today, David. Thank you so much for joining us. I think there's been some really key takeaways from today's discussion. Maybe one last thing as we go. You've done some amazing things. What is David doing in the future? What are you planning next?
A lot of what I'm doing at the moment is massive projects in peri-urban South Africa and shack settlements. As I mentioned earlier, is rolling out really basic primary healthcare and access to medications outside of state facilities, assisting communities to decant these services so that there's not this congestion and lack of access to medical care. And it's been really difficult, but it's been an amazing journey, and we're starting to hit big success with this. So that is what the nucleus, the core is of what I'm doing. But in order to create awareness and raise funds in that, every now and then you need to go off and wander, because I think one of my kids said to me long ago, they said, "Dad, why do you do this?" So I said to them, "Look here, there's so many people out there looking for assistance and help. Unless you do something stupid, no one's going to listen to you. And by doing something stupid, someone listens to you, and finally you get into that corporate boardroom and you say, 'Come, I need your money. I can do something good with it.'" So it's helping rebuild this country. And I'm, as a South African, I'm putting up my hand. I'm saying, you can count on me. I'm going nowhere. I'm going to make a difference in this country, and I want this country to be a place that rocks for the future. And that's my dream and goal, is to be one of those bricks rebuilding the fundamentals of this country.
David, it seems like a sense of legacy is also something that is really, really important to you, and all of these projects that you're involved in, speak to that sense of legacy that you want to leave behind. What's the one thing that you want to be known for on this planet?
Giving someone else the ability to prove they can make a difference. I think for me that's important, because we need the youth and who's ever coming up through the ranks to be able to do this. And if I have been a catalyst to unlock someone else's initiative to make a difference in the country, I think for me that's more than anything. Some other kid that can run out there and hold up the flag and saying, I love this country, I'm going to make a difference, and I actually care. And I think that's important. We're losing a lot of that, the caring and respect for each other as things are evolving. But COVID's giving us it's resetting our moral compass to true north, as I say. And if every one of us can reset that moral compass, the rest falls in place.
David, thank you so much for your time today. You're an incredible inspiration to me and many other people around the world, and appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
It's a great pleasure. And thanks for the chat. I found it enthralling myself, and it was nice speaking to you. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.